Today on Locked On Red Wings, trap game.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty is a freelance journalist for the Detroit News, as well as the host of Locked On Tigers. And I didn't want to say it when we were talking about it on Friday's episode, Scotty, and we kind of danced around, beat around the bush, but I didn't want to say the words trap game. But I had that feeling inside me, like, okay, you're beating two teams that were top dogs in their division, on fire this season, and now you're going to face the last place in the Metropolitan Division team. I had that gut feeling that was going to be a trap game, and what did we see?
Yeah, no, I don't remember the exact wording, but we talked about, there was a comment we had made on Friday's show where we were like, you know, like this, I think we said this shouldn't be a trap game. I think we were like, yeah. You should just win. And like, you should, you know, you got back-to-back, like big wins, and you really need to just like carry the momentum through, and it shouldn't be a trap game and whatnot. And then obviously it was. And I don't know, man, that was a really, like, the most on-brand game of the entire season. Like, they played horrible for two periods, amazing for the third, and fell just short. And also, just like the last two games have perfectly encapsulated it, because, like, consistently inconsistent, whether it's game to game and right, you're losing to the Blue Jackets but beating the Leafs, or whether it's period to period and you have two unbelievably terrible periods against Columbus, and then one where you look like comfortably the best team on the ice and almost complete a comeback. Like the last two games have just perfectly summed up the Red Wings season up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game where there is absolutely zero excuses. You know, we talk about losses where there's positive takeaways. And I mean, like, oh boy, like I'm sure we'll talk about the third period where they finally pulled it together and were competitive, but there's zero excuses for a game like this.
Yeah.
They had a day off in between, so you can't say they were tired. Now, I know Hronek was day to day and maybe almost didn't play, and he ended up being one of the best players in the game. But like, this is one of the worst teams in the league this season, and you just flat out underestimated them. That's what it was. I firmly believe that the Red Wings were feeling very good about themselves after two wins against very good teams, and they thought, Columbus, well, this is a win. And they looked down on their opponent, and Patrik Laine made you pay, because Patrik Laine scored a hat trick against you. And he's a very, very good hockey player, but this is a team that has 13 wins on the season. They have 28 points, and you let them put a 4 spot up on you because you forgot how to play defense. You forgot how to pass. And for the first two periods of that game, the Red Wings did not look like a National Hockey League team. And that was an embarrassing loss.
And it was, like you said, it was, we can talk about every aspect of the game that it was bad, because it was bad, but that was just horrific defense for two periods, man. I mean, that was like unbelievably bad. And I know against Winnipeg, the defense wasn't exactly great either, and we talked about the pros and cons of that game. And they have a decently long history this season of just having to outscore the other team, or Husso just kind of putting the team on his back and not really having a great defensive performance. This, for the first two periods, was undeniably horrible.
I mean, yeah. So as far as Ville Husso goes too, we usually are pretty staunch goalie defenders. I mean, I feel like we say that every single episode at this point, but he did not look his sharpest either. Now, two of those were backdoor goals, and that goes into our conversation about how piss poor this defense has been. But you know, the two other goals were, one was a shot that he should have caught. Like he caught it in his chest, but gave up the rebound and a scramble ensued. And the goal, that puck ended up going in on like the fourth attempt by the Blue Jackets. And you could argue that part of that is, and justifiably argue that part of that is the defense. What are you doing letting them hammer at the puck 3 or 4 times? But also Husso needs to be better at corralling the rebound. And there was another goal like that where he made the initial save, which is important. And we always say after the initial save, it's on your defense to clear the rebound. But goalies also are trained to control their rebounds and control where they go. And he didn't have great rebound control in this game. And so 2 of those goals, you could justifiably argue as well that Husso wasn't in top form. I'm never going to say Husso's to blame, but he wasn't part of the solution in this game, where oftentimes, most games, he is part of the solution. But this wasn't his best game. It wasn't. His goals saved above expected show. He was a negative 1.51. So he saved 1.5 less goals than he should have, according to advanced analytics. I don't know how much stock you put into that, but I mean, I think it showed. I don't think it was his sharpest game.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously not. I don't, yeah, you could say that about pretty much everyone on the roster in this one. Like, it was just a really brutal game and an especially brutal 2 periods for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, again, you touched on it just now, but the defense,
Unreal.
In games where they lose, a lot of it has to do with the defense just looking completely lost in their defensive zone, where teams just dominate the offensive zone, their offensive zone, and skate circles around the Red Wings defense. No interruption to the passes. The Red Wings tend to like collapse into the slot, but that leaves the defense and the wingers along the boards just free to do whatever they want. The Red Wings are always late to getting the pucks along the boards. The other teams always beat them there. They always beat them in the puck battles. And in this game in particular, 2-on-1s were the death of this team. And I mean, that one comes down to, you can always talk about, it's an entire team game, right? You can always talk about, how did this 2-on-1 happen? But the inability to cover the passing lanes on 2-on-1s or 2-on-2s, even where it's man on man, basically. 2 of those goals were beautiful backdoor goals with nobody watching that guy backdoor. And Husso, those are the most difficult goals to prevent as a goaltender, when that puck goes all the way across the crease, because you have to then go all the way across the crease yourself. And the puck is usually faster than the goalie making a lateral. So, I mean, if this team can't figure out how to keep their head on a swivel and look at the options available for the other team, then you're not going to be able to win hockey games. And this has just been, we talk about consistency, Scotty, and how this team offensively is inconsistent. Well, this is something that has been consistent throughout the entire season thus far. In terms of massive flaws, the team's play in their own defensive zone is just, they look lost, man.
Yeah, they do. And something that, you know, in the Toronto game, we talked about how the defense was so good because they really eliminated a lot of shots in the slot and really eliminated a lot of passes in the slot and just were really, really good up the middle. And in this game, it was the exact opposite. And that's why and not necessarily that every goal came from the slot or the high slot or whatever, but they were just, Columbus was just able to, again, for 2 periods, any pass across the ice was just uncontested. It was incredible. I've never seen an NHL game in which a team had such ease passing from one side of the ice to the other and just like passing right through the slot with no resistance. That's the word, at all. Like it really, really brutal. And if you're allowing easy passes, it's going to be a tough night for you.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. The team did manage to turn it around, but too little, too late. We'll touch on that. Yeah, I just noticed your camera got really dark just now. It's been happening to me too. I've been constantly adjusting my ring light. Like this entire
my lights
episode.
just went out.
Oh, your lights went out? Did you lose power? Are you on battery now? Well, if you lost power, you would have lost Wi-Fi connection.
Right.
Interesting. Well, while Scotty figures out how to look like he's not in a cave, I'll do this ad read.
I'm still here.
Our next partner is a product you got to use literally every day. Start taking AG1, because with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all those things. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, and no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him $100 a day. But Athletic Greens, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're breaking down the loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets, 4-3. It was 3-0 after the first period on like 8 shots, it felt like. 4-0 after the second period, and then they were able to finally turn it around in the third period. Although I would argue a little bit, it started a little bit before that in the second period. They obviously didn't get the goals, but the game became a little bit more even in the second period. And then in the third period, it was pretty much pure domination, save a few rush chances by Columbus. But we talk about it, and you talked about it in the first segment there, too little too late at that point, man. You're already down 4-0. You've put yourself into a huge hole, and now you have to bank on another huge comeback with 1 period left to try and dig out of it. And granted, they almost did it, and that third period was exciting. By the end of it, I was on the edge of my seat going, are they going to do this? But they couldn't.
No, and like we've seen this movie before, like a plethora of times too. Like we've seen this team come back in the third for multiple goal deficits. We've seen them take it into overtime and steal a point. We've seen them just flat out win. We've seen 4-goal comebacks. Like we've seen this before, and that's great. Like there is something to be said for the fact that, you know, the last 3, 4, 5 years, like this hasn't been a thing, right? Like during the depths of the rebuild. There
is something to be said about the ability to not cave in and give in and battle back. But
it
can't
100%.
be.
There's something to be said for a game never being over with your team, which is great. But you're not going to be a consistent winner in the NHL by just coming back once a week, right? Like you're going to have to just be the better team. Like I know that I'm not trying to be like a Captain Obvious, but like just the next step in development, I guess, is my point. Like when a team is exiting a rebuild, there's different levels and different steps along the way that you want to reach with team success. And I would say that you're on a decent one, right? Like there's something to be said for being the team that can come back and never just like gets blown out necessarily. I mean, we've seen us get blown out, but everybody does at least a couple of times. So there's something to be said for that. But the next step is consistent enough play to where you're not forcing yourself and backing yourself into that corner.
No, you're completely right. You know, the ability to never give in and make those comebacks is a fantastic trait to have when you're a team that's already winning games on a consistent basis.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're trying, and I'm not trying to imply that this is the tactic that they're trying to employ, because nobody wants to go down 4-0, but you can't bank on that being how you win games. It's exciting when you're already an above 500 team able to come back from 4-0 down. But when you're a team that already loses the bulk of your games, and now technically their win percentage is above 500, and they're still on track to finish in the wheelhouse of what we deemed a successful season. But this is part of the growing pains that this team has to go through, is finding that consistency. And it is painful. But, you know, if we want to try and twist this into some positives, again, that the fact that they didn't give in and that they did fight back is great. And it came off, honestly, it started to become more of an even game in the second period. But that Olli Maatta goal, that was just pure luck. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of puck luck to really start the engine on the game. Olli Maatta scored off the redirection of their own teammate, where he basically just put it in their own net. And then 2 minutes later, not even 2 minutes, like a minute, 20 seconds later, Jake Walman, who continues to be on fire, his 5th goal of the season, intercepts a pass and just rifles it home. Even though defensively, he and Seider had their worst, they were the bottom of the team in Corsi for percentage, as this team usually got caved in the first 2 periods. He continues offensively to produce. And I mean, I tweeted out the other day, I was like, screw it. Hashtag NHL All-Star vote Walman, because he's just been playing so well, especially offensively lately. I mean, that's 2 goals from your defenseman. And then if you look at Lucas Raymond's goal, which was a really nice play, as he continues to heat up again, flying under the radar, honestly, on how he's been heating up. But he's been heating up, 13 goals now. Both those assists, Philip Hronik and Ben Sherratt. Sherratt, by the way, had a horrible game. But, on every single goal, defensemen were heavily involved in the play, which is crazy to be like, that's a positive when you look at how not just the defensemen, but the entire team played in the defensive zone. But it seemed like the only effectiveness the team could garner was in the offensive zone.
Yeah, which again, like we're really trying to
we're grasping at straws
positively, like really badly here, but like we have had times this season where we talked about how the offense was really only effective on the rush or really only effective on special teams, and the fact that even if it is sparked by a defensive pairing sometimes, like the fact that we did have a couple of pretty nice moments in the offensive zone and like sets that were actually run instead of and like maintained possession rather than just a rush or whatnot is at least something. Again, like this is really like please find a positive in this type of a commentary here, but there is something to be said for that, and I think that's why that pairing is going to stay together, because they do help the offensive, and even if the defensive side of things is kind of game to game a little bit inconsistent, at least they're so far pretty consistently helping on the offensive side of the puck.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, we're grasping at straws for positives. Like, it was exciting to see their comeback. I was happy they turned it on. I'm happy they didn't give in. But just like the key to this rebuild right now is buying into the system and becoming consistent. Like, the team has on paper is much better. While a lot of the players who succeeded last year on the stat sheet are replicating that success this year, minus like Bertuzzi, but we'll talk about that at a later time. He's in a bit of a rough stretch, and then the new guys have come in and they've produced on the stat sheet as well. David Perron has continued to play well, statistically speaking. He had the best game on Corsi and expected goals for percentage, well over 70%. He had, when he was on the ice, the team had 12 shot attempts for and 5 shot attempts against. Those guys continue to play really well, and that's great to see. But, all of these individual players are, while they're great to have, it doesn't do a lot of good if the individual players aren't meshing well together. And that's going to be the biggest hurdle that this rebuild overcomes, with a first-year head coach who has never been an NHL head coach before and a lot of new faces on this roster. Getting them to all come together and become a hockey team to consistently play that system. And, we may find out the system doesn't work. It's way too early to tell still. They have shown improvements in some regards compared to last year. But, that to get consistent is going to just take this team, this coaching staff, all becoming in sync. And that is something that we still are struggling to get. And that's going to be the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, no, we say it all the time. The next step is consistency. That's what pretty much any team that goes through a full teardown and then a rebuild up goes from consistently bad to semi-consistently bad to semi-consistently good to consistently good, right? Like, I know, and like growth isn't linear and there's a lot of other steps there in between and whatnot, but if you wanted to make it super simple, that would be how it would go. And right now you're somewhere around the semi-consistently bad to semi-consistently good area.
Well, and I'll get into the weeds a little bit here with some of the analytics. You know, I love to bring this shit up. But
okay.
The heat map. This is so in the tail end of the second and all the third, the Red Wings dominated the shot attempts, where they just, I think they had like 65% share of the shot attempts in the third period at even strength. But if you can look at this heat map here, you can see that the Red Wings never really had quality shot attempts a lot of the time. You look at the heat map, the Red Wings in the slot were almost non-existent besides Lucas Raymond's one goal that he scored on that beautiful backhander. They really didn't get a lot of shots from inside the circles. Meanwhile, the Columbus Blue Jackets heat map is pretty much the entirety of the inside of the dots area in the Red Wings zone. And 3 of their full 4 goals. Oh, look at that. Actually, I mean, all 4 of their goals came from the left side, but 3 of those 4 goals came from, I don't know, backdoor. Like, it's great that they turned it around and started shooting the puck a lot in the third period, but they still didn't have a lot of quality shot attempts. The only goal that they had that was a quality shot attempt was probably Lucas Raymond's backhand, like from right in there. You know, Jake Walman turned it over and he took a shot from high in the circle. I think that's this one right here is his. So I guess you could argue too. Maybe I'm being a little bit of a downer, but like Olli Maatta's goal, that was just pure luck. So while it's great that they turned it around and they were generating a lot more shot attempts, they still were having trouble getting into the high danger areas. Yeah, and when they did get in the high danger areas, it paid off in Walman and Raymond's goals. So it's just
pretty much no like shots from the wings in like all of the high danger slots. And then defensively, that was one of the ugliest opponent shot maps I've ever seen. That was horrible.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. Now, I wouldn't say it was some of the, because remember the other day when they played, was it the Jets? And it was like 5+ shot attempts was the deep end. And it was all inside.
That game was
that was
rough too.
They
were able to outscore their way in that one.
Like, I'm not going to come out here and say that's the worst game they've played all season. Dirk Lulund already said the game against the Jets was that game. The game they won, which we keep joking.
This game hadn't happened yet, to be fair.
But this game was very bad for the bulk majority of it. And, you know, hopefully they can come out on Monday and play much better against the reigning Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche, which we will preview in the next segment. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the National Hockey League regular season. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, Monday night, the Red Wings are playing the reigning Stanley Cup champions, Colorado Avalanche.
That's why we really wanted to win against Columbus.
We really want that 3 games winning streak. But if you look at the bright side, if you're trying to pull a silver lining, I'm an optimist. I try to be an optimist, at least. Maybe that loss against the Columbus Blue Jackets will really fire them up to come out and play hard against the Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche are 4th in the Central Division, but don't think they're having a down year. A lot of the reason why they're down in the standing is because a lot of their key players have been injured. They've lost a lot of guys to injury. But since McKinnon's come back, they have been slowly climbing the standings. Now, they were like 6th the other day. Now they're already up to 4th, 21-17-3. They're still a threat, man.
Chicago.
They did lose to Chicago. Well, we lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets, so what does it matter?
I wasn't comparing. I was just stating an objective truth. We're not the reigning Stanley Cup champs either, Brian.
I wish we were. I wish we were. But yeah, man, looking at the Columbus Blue Jackets, can't get them out of my head. They live rent-free.
I know,
Colorado Avalanche. Mikko Rantanen, 53 points in 41 games, 1 goal away from a 30-goal season already. Yeah. Nathan McKinnon, since coming back from injury in 30 games played, 43 points. Who would have guessed he's good? Cale Makar, 40 points in 41 games. People are saying he's having a down year because he's a point per game. It's like, are you kidding me? He's a defenseman who's a point per game right now. It's just it's insane.
I can't imagine being that good at something where I can be still the best in the league at it production-wise. And people Just are like, yeah, it's a down year, dude.
Their goaltending is still strong. Alexander Georgiev in 30 games played has a .915 save percentage. Granted, his goals a game are a bit up there at 275. But, you know, the defense has been a little bit defensively for them, not that good. But
that's where a lot of their injuries were early on, too.
That's exactly it. They're still 5th in the league at Corsi for percentage, guys, at even strength. So it's like,
I mean, it's still the Avs, dude. Yeah, like
it's still the
you
Avs.
know, this is always a fun game for Detroit just because like of the rivalry and whatnot. But yeah, like this is
and it will be at LCA.
Right. This is still like one of the best teams in the NHL and one of the best rosters in the NHL with some of the biggest star power in the NHL. Like this is certainly going to be a tall task, and I have a hard time believing they're going to be able to third period come back from a deficit against this team.
No, and I mean, this is a loaded question, Scotty, and that's why I'm going to ask you it because I don't want to answer it. How do you beat this team?
How do I beat them?
Yeah, how do you beat the Colorado Avalanche? Let's try and
play defense like you did against Toronto, and you play offense like you have for the last 3 games. Offense hasn't really been the problem for the last 3 or 4 games, and I know they've won a majority of those games too, but. Like the biggest thing with this Wings team, it consistently on a night to, you know, sometimes the offense will just turn off, and we talk about that, the inconsistency of the team. But the consistent thing about this team is the when they lose, it is almost it is much more the defense's fault than the offense, I would say, on a night to night basis. So, yeah, I would say that you gotta. We've seen it. We've seen you play really good defense against a really good team. We know it's possible. We know it's in there.
It's getting to the point in the season where it just feels so repetitive. I mean,
yeah,
we keep asking this team to do the same thing.
I mean, we have a big enough sample size now. Like we know what this team is, and we certainly know what our opponent's team is as well. Like, yeah, I mean, we're everything that we usually say, like the things that you usually do poorly, like try to do them well. The Avs aren't very good in the face-off circle this year. Maybe that's something you can take advantage of. But, yeah, you're going to need to take advantage on special teams, and you're going to need to play defense against a really, really good offense, which, again, we've seen them do all those things before, just not really on a consistent basis. So.
And it's like the one game where that does all come together, you still manage to lose. But,
yeah.
The Colorado Avalanche are favorites at home or on the road, I should say. Red Wings are at home. And that says a lot about, you know, how people view this matchup. The over-under in this game, Scotty, is set to 6.5, which is a half goal higher than normal, but that's because Colorado Avalanche are a high-scoring team. The Red Wings have been scoring a little bit more in their more recent games, and they're giving up quite a few goals. I mean, outside the Toronto Maple Leafs game, you gave up 5 against the Toronto Maple Leafs or Winnipeg Jets in your win, and then you gave up 4 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they're expecting this to be a high-scoring game, but it's pretty much a dead even split, though. It's minus 104 odds on BetOnline for the over and minus 106 odds for the under, and that would technically, I think, make the under the favorite. But I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. It's going to be. I don't know what to want to take on this one. This would be tough.
I'll take the over.
See, I want to say take the over as well, but I feel like the Colorado Avalanche can be so suffocating that the Red Wings aren't going to get many scoring opportunities on their own. And so unless I'm expecting the Wings to score like 1 and the Avalanche to score 6, which, I mean, is possible knowing the Avalanche, it's tough, man. I think for the sake of argument, I'll take the under. It feels like anytime, and that is minus 106, but the over is minus 104. So even though it's like negligible, I don't know, man. It's tough. I'm thinking that this is it's going to be one of those ones that could go completely either way.
I'll take
in terms
the
of
over.
the scoring. Oh, I'll take the under. Make it more interesting. All right. Alex Nedeljkovic, 6 games played in the Grand Rapids.
Shutty.
Yeah, shutout, and he's got a 920 save percentage. I think his record's like kind of 500-ish, but he's been playing really well. The Griffins just sucked this season. I think Verona got scratched again, and it's part of the veterans rule. But
yeah, that's 2 games in a row.
I don't know if it was in a row. I haven't been keeping a close eye on how many.
Maybe 2 of their last 3 or something. Yeah, it's 2 in pretty short order. And they both are claiming veterans rule. Yeah,
but it's I am starting to get concerned over that situation. And I think that concern is justified. And it's just, you don't want to speculate because that's wrong. But like, there are I'm getting concerned, about that situation for sure. I was very optimistic about the situation going into it because it's like, we don't have any proof. So this is probably like this is what we know. So this is what I'm going to go off of. But now it's just like, oh man, I'm nervous. I really want Vrana back in the team. I want him back to full strength, but I get there's the veterans rule thing. But if you have Jacob Vrana, you would think that he'd be a guy you're like always playing.
Yeah. You would. I mean, again, who knows?
I won't speculate. I'm just saying I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, who knows what's going on down there? But yeah, it's certainly something that everyone has now noticed and is talking about, and understandably so. It's definitely a storyline that continues to produce head-scratching moments, and
one that I don't want to have to follow. Like, I want to be able to move on from the Vrana thing. I want him back on the team. For sure. I mean, we'll continue to keep an eye on it for sure. And then whenever we have concrete updates for you guys, we'll talk about it. But again, we will not speculate outside of what we factually know because that situation is very sensitive. So we will be back on Monday with this is Monday's episode. We'll be back Tuesday with we record on tomorrow. Everybody. We record the day before.
Say tomorrow, dude. Just say tomorrow.
No, we'll be back Tuesday. Any final thoughts?
We ball.
All right. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
BetOnline.